Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome back to the program the author of the Americana newsletter at Semafor, Dave Weigel. We had Dave by video, but he's in some type of structure in Philly, and it looked like a Kubrick shot that you had, but unfortunately the connection wasn't so great, so we got you on phone.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I went out of my way to find a place that would work, and it didn't work.
Well, that's all right.
Well, no one should ever leave their home.
That's right.
It's a good message.
Never go anywhere. But I know you're on the road. You're heading to the debate tonight. I want to talk about the debate in a moment. But first, I want to talk about this story that you were part of reporting in Semafor. This story came out, and I don't know if it was coincidental or what, in the wake of the DOJ releasing the grand jury indictment against two Russians who were basically paying people like Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, a couple of others in the right-wing thing to put out videos, paying them a lot of money, incidentally. But they, of course, were victimized. We should all be so victimized so that, it's one of those reverse muggings where someone comes and shoves $500,000 into your pocket in the dead of the night. But be that as it may, your piece was about a Zoom meeting of right-wing influencers, we don't know who are getting paid money with a specific mission. Just walk us through what you found.
Yeah, so I teamed up with a few reporters because a different person got the tip, and we were all checking people that we heard were on this call who kept denying that they were on it. That could be a lie. It could be a misunderstanding by the person doing it. But everybody had the same details were confirmed by everybody. There was a guy using this name Bacon, like James Bacon, the same name as somebody close to Trump and Heritage, but not him, who had these calls where he was offering basically $10,000 if people coordinating their anti-Harris messaging. And the messaging wasn't that innovative. It was the sort of stuff that Trump and Vance were if not saying themselves, retweeting. Sort of how to talk about this in a diplomatic way. Very personal stuff about her love life and the choices she made as a woman. And George Santos bailed on this and said it didn't work. So that's sort of the person who confirmed the details here. But a window into how this is happening a lot. And if I had my journalist cap on my head now, I will say it's ironic that at a moment when people have so much disdain for the media, so little trust for the media, for sources, etc., they do seem to just fall for people who might be getting paid off and retweet whatever they say.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I remember when we used to have those the jokes about the bloggers ethics panels, and this is a massive issue. But I want to go into this a little more. So we don't know who was paying the $10,000. I think at one point somebody was offered $20,000 to push this stuff. We don't know who it was, or is it just someone who has a similar name, or what? Go back over that detail for us again.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. One second.
No worries. We always get Dave Weigel on the run.
He's always out the trail. As Vivek.
Sorry, I'm trying to juggle 10 things at once here. Yes, when we approached the people who were the person who was doing this, the phone stopped working. They didn't answer the call, so somebody tried to cover their tracks. Their tracks is what happened. That's how we can't definitively answer who was doing this. And we are welcome for tips. Anyone wants to point to who's actually doing this.
So wait a second. So you got a tip that, and you've confirmed that people on this call were getting $10,000 for this one gig, essentially?
We confirmed that. We have evidence that this is being offered to people, and I think we ran it partly because this Russia story made it clear that a lot of money is moving around with people not asking very hard questions about it. You saw with the Russia $400,000 story, the only skepticism about where the money was coming from was answered by a one-page biography that looked really fake. It was like a guy who looked gross to be a billionaire in a private jet. And here it wasn't even that. It was more how do we monetize a conversation and organize what people are doing on Twitter in a more politically effective way, but it wasn't clear who was behind it. Again, this is stuff it is sort of happening. If you go to X at any moment, you saw this in the last 24 hours with J.D. Vance calling for people to make racist memes of Trump saving cats from black people. It does not take much of a push. And this is a pattern with some of these payola schemes, is that they're offering people money for something they're doing anyway, which if they really want to go to bed at night feeling good about this, they're not telling them to change their opinions. They're just saying, hey, you're doing a great job. Here's money for it, and finding people who don't ask a ton of questions about it. The reason Santos bailed is because he thought it was going to be stupid and it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and Santos, did you confirm that with Santos? Because he also tweeted like 2 days after this call that, oh my gosh, look at what everybody's saying. Surprise, surprise, or something like that. This is what he does. Oddly enough, conservative influencers talking about Kamala's sex life and race. He tweeted July 24, less than 48 hours after he'd left the influencer call. Please, God, make it stop. So do you know if these people were exclusively on Twitter getting paid $10,000 to $20,000 to push this, or do they have other outlets?
No, they were hiding their tracks so much that we can assume they probably are doing this through other means. It might just be one actor whose job was paying this small amount of money to some people who would coordinate their messaging like this. So no, we published the piece with some unanswered questions because it's very clear that something is happening all the time with money being dangled in front of people to do pro-Trump MAGA messaging. And we said, we've heard enough about this, but we know this happened. Santos, again, ratted it out because he thought it was stupid. He was commenting on this stuff online days after the call itself and confirmed the call. So this is happening. How many of these things are happening? Please come to us and tell us. If you are being offered money and you want to rat out the people who did it, please tell us who.
I'm not sure.
Or tell us at least what fake name they use.
Yeah, I'm not sure a ton of those people are probably listening to us today. But my thought with the whole Russian thing was exactly sort of what you're saying. That these people must be getting money like this of some sort on a fairly regular basis, because if somebody's coming to me and offering me $100,000 a month to do 4 videos, the first thing that would occur to me is like, there's no way people are going to get a return on this. What is going on here? And if you're willing to take that money, it seems to me you don't go from getting paid nothing to be putting out videos like that to taking $100,000 a month. You've got to be thinking, oh, okay, this is just, I've got a live one on and I'm going to reel this in. And then the other part where you said, I think it's absolutely true. This is more about subsidizing people in this space to keep them in it. I mean, Dave, I know you remember this, like back in the blogging days, a lot of those bloggers are gone now in terms of like you couldn't afford to do it. But this is keeping people in the basically in the arena. This is like all of these subsidies. It's not really a question of whether or not they're paying people to say something they don't believe in. They don't believe in anything, I don't think. It's they're being allowed to basically be profitable in a space where they wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Yeah, there's a lot of money sloshing around, and some of it's from deals with Rumble, deals with these networks. But in journalism, as you know, not crazy lucrative. There are not a lot of people dangling huge checks for people to do unglamorous investigative reporting that's going to take 3 months and maybe pay off. There is a lot of money for getting your face on somebody's computer screen and agreeing with their priors and telling them that they're right, or sharing some fake stuff. At least one of the people getting the the Russian bail that we know about, separate from our story, was, again, 48 hours spreading the fake Haitians are eating cats thing. You need to have your shame portion of your brain removed to do this, and that's already happened for some of the people involved in this. And you also need an audience that's not going to care, which they apparently have. And if I could back up a couple of paces, the heuristic for all this is that in 2016, Russian agents hacked Hillary Clinton's campaign several times. Russia clearly wanted Donald Trump to win the election. And on the right, it's an article of faith that this is a crazy idea that Democrats made up in order to hurt Trump. Weirdly, not until after the election was over and they'd already lost. They seeded the deep state with a campaign to beat him. And every time you hear about Russia and Trump, it's fake. And you saw that response from a lot of Republicans. That was a very hands on the ears, la la la, I'm not listening. The response is usually Russia, 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 or Russiagate. Just saying if something is connected to Russia on the right, it is assumed that it is false. And I think that played out in two ways here. One, on the financial end, if you have a doubt that maybe I'm getting money from a Russian agent or an operative, well, you've already convinced yourself this doesn't happen, so don't worry about it. And two, after it happens, there's not really a consequence, because if you went and tell your listeners, sorry, I was paid off by the Russians, you sound like a simp. You sound like you're repeating Hillary Clinton's talking points, because in this space, it is understood that, no, the Russians never acted. I think the reality that's been proven in court is that, yes, there were Russian interference in the 2016 election. There's interference in every election. There's especially specific attempts successfully to steal Democratic email that time. And then also, there were a lot of liberals on TV who said silly things about Russia that weren't true. Like, that often happens. There are things that people say about every politician that people... Would Republicans, if they're pushed, admit that Hillary Clinton did not commit all the murders that she's accused of? Maybe they would. Everyone could agree that that rhetoric gets out of hand. I would have thought, except for this, it really is. If it involves Russia, there's just there's the negative permission structure. You just are not allowed to consider that you might be subjected to Russian influence, because you have said for 8 years that stuff is fake. It's fake to cast doubt on how Donald Trump won the presidency. Therefore, Russian influence can't exist.
It almost gave emboldened Russian money, I guess, to come into those spaces, right? For right-wing media. But I'm also curious about, we had David Friedlander on, I guess, a few weeks ago to talk about his piece about Truth Social and how Trump, went public with Truth Social and that company, and it was a multi-billion-dollar valuation. But in May, Trump Media announced a quarterly revenue of $770,500 and losses of $328 million for that particular operation. It makes me wonder, how much is this money also being given to right-wing, even political organizations, or through just trading DJT on the publicly traded it's now publicly traded, right? And buying that stock. There's a lot of lack of oversight, particularly as it relates to Trump's own media operation and where that money is even coming from. How can you have a quarterly revenue of less than $800K and $328 million in losses and then pretend like there's not something shady going on here?
The answer is you win the election, say it didn't matter. This is what happened after 2016, where not just Russia questions, but questions about, for example, Donald Trump saying I'm going to release my taxes at some point for the 2016 election, and then never doing that. The answer from Kellyanne Conway that I think was repeated down the chain was, well, no, the election confirmed that people wanted Donald Trump, and anything litigated before the election doesn't matter. And that's basically the way this stuff is considered. And are there two sets of rules for people? Yes. Do positions that Kamala Harris took in 2019 before she was elected vice president, must they be answered now? Yes. Are there questions about Republicans that were asked in 2020 in 2015 that don't matter anymore? Oh yes, also that. Who gets a baptism and who doesn't is a very partisan question here. But no, you're right. There's just stuff that it depends. And the other part of this pressure that's not just political, but it's in that mix, is how much noise can you make so that that the Justice Department or U.S. attorneys don't investigate this stuff. If you make it look like it's a political investigation before an election that could affect the vote, then you that's the argument you make. You might even go to court and say this is interference. This is an argument that I saw Darrell Issa making last week after Jack Smith, because of Eileen Cannon ruling in his case, just agreeing with this sort of fringe legal theory that Jack Smith wasn't constitutionally appointed. Jack Smith refiled his indictment. I saw Darrell Issa saying, "Oh, it's too close to the election to refile an indictment." I mean, this is what Trump has been better at many politicians doing based on his experience in New York. Is that the courts have lots of functions. They can also slow things down until your opponent runs out of money and time. And that's how he's generally done this. He has an echo chamber of Republicans agreeing to saying this. So yeah, what would happen if the FCC launched an investigation into True Social and who's creating it, if there was a spike in it? Well, one the thing that would happen would be the Trump campaign, Fox News, OAN, et cetera, saying Democrats are losing the election and they're trying to rig it against Trump by doing this.
Right.
That's the answer for everything. I think that answer only stops making sense if all of a sudden Trump was losing by 15 points. It looked like nothing was going to matter, or he was winning by 15 points. No, everything fits into that framework, and it's a very shut your brain off, don't pay attention sort of answer. And I'm not trying to be too dismissive, but it's been 8 years of this now. Please don't pay any attention to negative stories that don't fit our framework of how Donald Trump won the first time.
I still remain sort of fascinated about this dynamic here with first off, one more detail thing. Do you have any idea whether this was a standing Zoom call or not? Because it's one thing, okay, I find it hard to believe that whoever is offering $10,000 to these half a dozen people or so on this call, that they're not doing this every week, right? Mm-hmm. I find it hard to believe that they're taking all these security protocols so they can't be identified on this Zoom. And this is the first time it's happened. This sounds to me like this is the Tuesday call, or this is here's the bat signal. Let's all get on the call. This is a process, an ongoing process, because what I find fascinating about this and also the DOJ thing is I'm a little bit, look, Russia has this interest. It happens to align with a lot of other people's interests too, frankly, in the Republican Party. But what I find fascinating is that there is all of this money sloshing around being given and keeping these people afloat. And in one instance, it looks like maybe a standing Zoom call where everybody's getting their $10,000 on an ad hoc basis. That could be twice a week. It could be once a month. It could be, I don't know. How many times? Or you have this enterprise like Tenet Media, which was look, it's a real company. Mm-hmm. It just happens to be funded by, in the context of our elections and illegal money. But
yeah.
But we got people setting up Rumble. We got people setting up Call-In. We got people setting up, whatever it was. What was that? Parlor. And I know people are getting paid money to go on these things. And basically, this is a subsidy to keep people in the game, essentially. And I'm convinced that much of right-wing media has been built on this just from having seen it within the context of the radio business.
No, I know what you're talking about. You don't need that. You don't need bribes necessarily, too, because I was accidentally way ahead on this story. Back in 2014, or I think it must have been 13 or 14, I wrote for Slate about RT, Russia Today, which now is I think classified as foreign op, but was a progressive sort of pro-Ron Paul network. And if I had to describe the overall politics, they were hard to pin down, but they were the sort of people who then went on to be RFK Jr. voters. The people who said America is in decline. Look how bad things are getting. Look how corporations run the country. It had a coherent worldview, which was not Russia is amazing, but that America's falling apart, and we may be on the, to quote Tim Pool, who tweets this every day, one of the guys taking the Russian money, we're on the verge of civil war. You've heard that a lot. And that required just paying people who want to be journalists some money to do TV journalism. You're out of college, you get an opening at a international network. You're getting interviews and debates and going on the road to cover stories. But that wasn't bribes. That was one version of this, though, of just it doesn't need to, there's never going to be a ad that says, we love Vladimir Putin, let's support Russia over Ukraine. It's never that direct. It's just what will help undermine the people who are tougher on Putin. And I don't want to be too generic about this. Tough is like a loaded term. And the people who will be more likely to take his side in some war and peace negotiations. Let's help them out. You don't need to say Putin's amazing. You can just say, hey, undecided voter, doesn't it look like things are crazy? Doesn't it look like the country's falling apart? Doesn't it look like we're about to fall into civil war, that migrants are going to take your house? Well, just think about that. Like, share this meme about that. I mean, I've not to get too far afield, but when I've talked to conservative voters, I often I'll ask where they get media from, and just it's been mushrooming, not just stuff like RT, but I met people a couple of voters said they were red-pilled by ifunny.com, which is just a meme website, and then like the memes they like are about how stupid Democrats are and about how the country's falling apart and you can't afford anything anymore. Like pushing people to vote for the out-of-power, more pro-Putin party. Lots of ways to do that that are less traceable or less scandalous than what happened here.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.